This video will analyze the guitar and bass parts that appear in the main riff. The riff is 2 measures long and will appear in the intro, bridges, verses, and outro of the song. Guitar 2 and the bass will evolve as the song progresses, while Guitar 1 remains constant. Tab sheets will briefly be displayed after the analysis of most parts. Demos of all parts combined will also be featured after each analysis of a song segment. The tuning used in this video and on the record is E-flat and 440 wavelength calibration. If you are unsure how to tune the E-flat, please watch the video E-flat tuning and enharmonic notes for guitar and bass by Marc Wilson. We'll begin with Guitar 1 in the intro. We're going to begin the riff pattern on Guitar 1 by using an A5 power chord. That's where the first finger is on the D string at the 7th fret. The third finger is on the G string at the 9th fret, and the pinky is on the B string at the 10th fret. We're going to let the open A string ring out as we play this chord. So on the 1 beat, we're going to pick this chord down and let it ring out as a quarter note. On the 2 beat, we're going to have an 8th note rest. On the N beat, after 2, we're going to slide this chord pattern down a full step in pitch, so the first finger is now on the 5th fret. We're going to pick this chord up and let it ring out as a quarter note. What we have here is a G5 power chord, again with the open A string ringing. On the 3 beat, we're going to have another 8th note rest. On the N beat after 3, we're going to slide this chord pattern down another half a step, so the first finger is on the 4th fret. We're going to pick this upwards. It rings out as an 8th note, and again the open A string is going to ring. On 4, we have another 8th note rest, and on the N beat after 4, we're going to slide that chord pattern back up to the G, where that first finger is on the 5th fret, and pick this up. So with the 4 count lead in, here's what the first measure of the riff pattern is going to sound like. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, and 3, and 4, and... Okay, notice what I'm doing there is on the downbeats where we have rests, I'm using the back of my thumb to dampen the strings on those rests. Also, what this is syncopation. We're actually accenting on the upbeats. I'll do that again without counting, but I'll still give you the 4 count lead in. 1, 2, 3, 4. We have just finished up the first measure. Now we're beginning the second measure. We're going to start with a 8th note rest on 1. So on the N beat right after 1, we're going to shift the chord pattern back down a half a step in pitch, so that first finger is on the 4th fret. This is actually an F sharp 5 power chord. Okay, we're going to pick this up and let it ring out as a quarter note. On the 2 beat, we're going to shift back up a half a step to the G5 power chord and pick this down and let it ring out as an 8th note. On the N beat right after 2, we're going to slide up a step in pitch. We're not going to pick this chord. We're going to let it sound as we slide back to the A5. Okay, this rings out as an 8th note. On 3, we'll pick this chord again downwards and let it ring out as a quarter note. And on 4, we have a quarter note rest. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to play the first 2 measures of the riff pattern in sequence, right from the beginning, with a 4 count lead in. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, and 3, and 4, and 1, and 2, and 3, 4. Now that you know the basic 2 measure long riff pattern on Guitar 1, we'll play it 4 times to start the song. What will be done at the start of the 2nd and 4th passes through the pattern is a slight alteration of the first quarter of measure 1. Instead of letting the A5 power chord sustain out as a quarter note, we'll play 2 8th notes instead, counted 1 in, with a downward picking motion on 1 and an upward picking motion on the N beat. This will be the 3rd and 7th measures. Here's a quick look at what the entire intro will sound like. I won't count aloud as I play, but will still give the 4-count lead in. 1, 2, 3, 4. The main rhythm part just detailed for guitar 1 will be consistently played the same way throughout the intro, bridges, and outro of the song. As you will see, guitar 2 and the bass will evolve during these segments as the song progresses. This is the main riff on guitar 1 as it gets played in the intro, bridges, and outro of the song. You'll notice the yellow highlight at the beginning of the 1st measure and at the end of the 4th measure. Those are repeat signs. It means to play this passage of music a 2nd time to give us 8 measures. Guitar 2 is going to be at rest for the first 4 measures of the intro. It'll enter on the 1st beat of the 5th measure with an open A5 power chord. And that's where the open A string rings and the 1st finger is barring the D and G strings at the 2nd fret. This will be picked downwards, and it's going to ring out as a whole note for that entire 5th measure. It's going to be tied to a dotted quarter note to start the 6th measure, which is an additional beat and a half. So on the and beat after 2, we're going to pick that power chord again upwards, but this time it rings out as an 8th note. On the 3 beat, we're going to play a single note by putting the middle finger on the A string to 3rd fret and pick this down. We're going to bend it about a quarter to a half a step in pitch, and when I do this I'm going to keep that 1st finger barring the A5 power chord. Okay, this rings out as an 8th note. On the and beat after 3, we're going to pick the open power chord upwards again. On 4, we're going to go back with the middle finger to the 3rd fret on the A string, pick that down and bend it again. On the and beat after 4, we're going to pick the open A5 power chord upwards. And on the 7th measure, we're going to pick the open A power chord down and let it ring out for the rest of the intro, which is the 7th and 8th measures. So with the 4-count lead in, I'm just going to play this part. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, and 3, and 4, and 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. This is all 8 measures on guitar 2 during the intro. The yellow highlight at the beginning and ending of the 1st measure is a repeat sign. We're going to repeat this and rest for 4 measures here. The empty measure at the end of the page doesn't mean anything, so just ignore it. The bass guitar is going to be at rest for the first 3 measures of the intro, while guitar 1 starts the song unaccompanied. We'll enter on the 4th measure on the and beat after 2 with a slide. The middle finger will be on the D string at the 7th fret. We'll pick this up, and we're going to slide up to the 14th fret as we do this. It's going to ring out as an 1/8 of a note. Once we get to the 14th fret, we're going to take the 3rd finger and place it on the G string there, pick this down, and slide down the neck and pitch for the remaining half of the 4th measure. To begin the 5th measure, we're going to hit the open A string by picking it downwards. This is going to be a whole note that rings out for the entire 5th measure, tied to another whole note on the 6th measure. And on the 7th measure, we're going to hit that open A string again, pick down for another whole note. So what I'm going to do is I'll give you a 4-count lead in, and we'll go right to measure 4. We're going to skip the first 3 measures since we're at rest anyway. So basically you'll have a 6-count. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. On the 8th measure of the intro, the bass guitar is going to do a fill to close out the intro and signal the beginning of the first bridge. We'll begin by placing the pinky on the G string at the 5th fret. We're going to pick this note down on 1 and let it ring out as an 8th note. On the and beat after 1, we're going to go with the first finger to the same string at the 2nd fret and pick this upwards. This rings out as an 8th of a note. On the 2 beat, we're going to have an 8th of a note of rest. On the and beat after 2, we'll pick the open G string upwards. This is going to ring out as an 8th of a note. On the 3 beat, we're going to go with the first finger to the D string to 2nd fret, pick this downwards. This is going to be an 8th note. And on the and beat after 3, we're going to pick the open D string upwards. This is also an 8th of a note. To close up the intro in the 8th measure, we're going to place the middle finger on the A string at the 3rd fret and pick this down. This will be a quarter note. With a 4-count lead in, this is what measure 8 will sound like. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. Let's run through all 8 measures on the bass guitar during the intro just one time. What I'll do for the lead in is just count the down beats aloud through the first 3 measures with our bass guitars at rest. We'll enter with the slide midway through the 4th measure. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2 and 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. This is all 8 measures on the bass guitar during the intro of the song. Notice the yellow highlight at the beginning and ending of the first measure. These are repeat signs. We're going to be at rest here for the first 3 measures before the bass enters. Now that you understand how Guitar 1 plays the main riff, Guitar 2 is going to be a little easier to do. We're going to play along using the same feel with the same accents, the same count, and the same picking motion. We're just going to do it off of 2 chords instead of 3. The first chord will be an A major chord where the open A string rings, with the first finger barring the D, G, and B strings at the 2nd fret. The second chord is the A, sus2, sus4. We're going to leave that first finger barring the D, G, and B strings as is. We'll place the middle finger on the B string at the 3rd fret and the 3rd finger on the G string at the 4th fret. So we're going to play it just like this, just like we're doing it on Guitar 1, just different chords. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3, 4. Now I'll play that again all the way through bridge 1, but I won't count aloud as I do it. Okay, I'll just give you the 4-count lead in, and this way you can better hear how the chords work together. 1, 2, 3, 4. This is all 8 measures on Guitar 2 during bridge 1. The repeat sign at the beginning of the first measure highlighted in yellow, and at the end of the second measure means to play these 2 measures 4 times in sequence to give us our 8 measures. Bridge 1 will appear at 17 seconds right after the intro. The first 4 measures on the bass will be a 2-measure long riff pattern played on the open A string of steady 8th notes for the entire first measure of the riff. This will continue for 3/4 of the second measure as well, with a quarter note rest on the final beat to close out the riff pattern. The pattern will be played twice to give us 4 measures. Alternate picking will be used. pick down on the down beats, 1, 2, 3, 4, and up on the and beats. This pattern will only appear in the first bridge. Here's a quick look at what that will sound like. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. The final 4 measures of bridge 1 on the bass will be the main 2 measure long riff pattern that will be reused throughout the remainder of the song. The pattern will be played twice to give us the final 4 measures. Here's a look at how to play the pattern. The main riff on the bass guitar is going to be 2 measures long. We're going to start out the first measure by placing the first finger on the A string at the 3rd fret. On the first beat, we're going to pick this note down and let it ring out as an 8th note. On the 8th note after that, the and beat, we're going to pick the open A string upwards. On the 2 beat, another 8th note, we're going to go with the first finger to the low E string to 3rd fret and pick that down. This is another 8th note. And on the and beat right after 2, the next 8th note, we're going to pick the open A string upwards. Okay, what I'm going to do is give you a 4 count lead in and play the first half of the first measure. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1 and 2 and. On the 3 beat, we have an 8th note rest. On the and beat after 3, we pick the open A string upwards. It rings out for an 1/8 of a note. On the 4 beat, we have another 1/8 of a note rest. And on the and beat after 4, we finish up the first measure by picking the open A string upwards again. This is an 8th note on the and beat. So with a 4 count lead in, here's what the first measure is going to sound like. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. And now we've reached the second measure of the riff pattern on the bass guitar. We're going to play 6 1/8 notes here, and on 4 we're going to have a 1/4 note rest to finish up the measure. We're going to begin with the first finger on the low E string at the 3rd fret. This is the 1 beat picked down. On the and beat after 1, we pick the open E string up. On the 2 beat, we go back to the 3rd fret with that first finger on the E string, pick it down. On the and beat after 2, we pick the open A string upwards. The next 2 beats are going to be on the open A string as well, counted 3 and, pick down and up. And on 4, of course, we have our 1/4 note rest. So I'll give you a 4 count lead in, and let's play the second measure in sequence just one time. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. Now with the 4 count lead in, let's play both measures of the riff pattern in sequence just one time. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. Now to get measures 5 through 8, in bridge 1 we're going to play that riff pattern twice. So let's play measures 5 through 8 in bridge 1. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. This is all 8 measures on the bass guitar during bridge 1. Just ignore the empty measure at the end of the tab sheet because it don't mean anything. On guitar 1, the verses are going to follow a 4 measure long pattern that gets played 4 times in sequence. On the first measure, we're going to work off of the A5 power chord. We're going to play 2 1/8 notes, counted 1 and, picked down and up, and then we'll be at rest for the remainder of the first measure. On the second measure, we're going to shift the chord pattern down a full step in pitch to the G5 power chord. We're going to play this measure exactly the same way. We're going to start out with 2/8 notes picked down and up, count of one hand, and be at rest for the remainder of the second measure. The third and fourth measures, we're just going to play our 2-measure long riff pattern. So with a 4-count lead in, here's what the first 4 measures of the verse on guitar 1 are going to sound like. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1 and 2, 3, 4, 1 and 2, 3, 4, 1, 2 and 3 and 4, and 1 and 2 and 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. This is all 18 measures on guitar 1 during the first and second verse. There's a yellow highlight at the beginning of the first measure and at the end of the fourth measure. These repeat signs mean to play these 4 measures 4 times in sequence to give us our first 16 measures. Also notice what appears to be the 5th and 6th measures on the tab sheet. This is actually the 17th and 18th measures. The diagonal line on the line that divides the 2 measures, with the dot above it and below it, means to repeat the previous 2 measures in place of these 2. The first verse appears at 32 seconds. During the first verse, guitar 2 will accent with guitar 1 using the same 4-measure pattern with the same feel, the same count, and the same picking pattern. But it's going to use the A major and A sus2, sus4 chords used during bridge 1. On the first measure, it will use an open A5 power chord. On measure 2, it will use a G5 chord. Both of these chords will be an octave lower in pitch than guitar 1. Here's a quick look at what that will sound like. 1, 2, 3, 4. During both verses, the bass guitar is going to follow the exact same 4-measure long pattern laid down by the guitars. Remember, it's a 4-measure long pattern that gets played 4 times to give us the first 16 of all 18 of the measures in the verses. The only thing we're going to do different is the start of the second measure in the sequence. The guitars will go to a G5 chord. The bass is going to stay on the open A string and accent with the A note. Remember that the guitars are also playing the open A string as they play that G5 chord. So with a 4-count lead in, I'm just going to run through all 18 measures of the verses on the bass guitar. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1 and 2, 3, 4, 1 and 2, 3, 4, 1 and 2 and 3, 4, and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, 1 and 2, 3, 4, 1 and 2, 3, 4, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, 1 and 2, 3, 4, 1 and 2, 3, 4, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, 1 and 2, 3, 4, 1 and 2, 3, 4, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. This is all 18 measures of verse 1 and 2 on the bass guitar. Notice the yellow highlight at the beginning of the first measure and at the end of the fourth measure. These repeat signs mean to play these first 4 measures 4 times in sequence to give us our first 16 measures. Also notice what appears to be the 5th and 6th measures on the tab sheet. On the line that divides them, there's a diagonal line with a dot above it and below it. That means to repeat what was done on the previous 2 measures in place of these 2 measures, the 17th and 18th measures. During bridges 2 and 3, guitar 2 will substitute in a C note in place of the quarter note rest on the 4th beat of the 2nd measure of the riff pattern. The note will be a quarter note picked downwards with the middle finger on the A string at the 3rd fret. This substitution will occur on the first 3 passes of the riff. Here's a quick look at what that will sound like. 1, 2, 3, 4. This is all 8 measures on guitar 2 during bridges 2 and 3. Notice the yellow highlight at the beginning of the first measure and at the end of the second measure. That repeat sign at the end of the second measure is going to keep sending you to the beginning of the first measure. Also notice the yellow highlight above the second measure that says 1 to 3. This is the first through third endings. On the 4th pass through, what you're going to do is play the first measure and skip directly to the last measure. On paper that appears to be the 3rd measure, but it's actually the 8th measure. And the blank measure at the end of the sheet is empty. It don't mean nothing, so just ignore it. Bridge 2 will appear at 1 minute and 26 seconds, and Bridge 3 will appear at 2 minutes and 34 seconds. The bass will just play the 2 measure long riff pattern through all 8 measures of bridges 2 and 3, unlike bridge 1 where it works steadily off of the open A string for the first 4 measures. Here's a quick once through of that. 1, 2, 3, 4. The second verse will appear at 1 minute and 42 seconds. During the second verse, guitar 2 will substitute in the same C note at the end of the second measure of the first pattern is used in bridges 2 and 3 on the 1st and 3rd passes through the 4 measure long pattern. But this time it comes in an 1/8 of a beat sooner. It will also be substituted back into the main 2 measure riff pattern that closes the verse on the first pass. Here's a quick look at what that will sound like. 1, 2, 3, 4. This is the first 16 measures on guitar 2 during the second verse. Notice the yellow highlight at the beginning of the first measure and at the end of the 8th measure. These repeat signs mean to play these first 8 measures twice in sequence to give us 16 measures. Also notice the yellow highlight above what appears to be the 7th measure on paper. That's the first ending. On the second pass through these 8 measures, we're going to play the first 6 measures a second time, then we're going to skip directly to the second ending, which appears on the next tab sheet to finish up the second verse. And here is the second ending for guitar 2 to finish up the second verse. This is actually measures 15 through 18.